how did you go from being a CFO of ConAgra to starting your own business? How did that happen?
Well, yeah, I'd spent 22 years in the corporate world, a bunch with Cargill, and then with ConAgra for 4 years as the CFO of their malting company. And ConAgra and the other owner of this joint venture decided they wanted us to move from Vancouver to Omaha. So we moved the headquarters office from Vancouver. And we had kids in high school at the time, and Pat and I started talking about it and saying, this might be a great opportunity to get out of the helter-skelter of the multinational and try something on my own. So my entrepreneurial bent was I was pretty excited about that. This gave us the opportunity. It gave me the opportunity to kind of test that. And so when we moved the office, I didn't move, and I stayed here in Vancouver, and the rest is history. Let me put it that way.
All right, great. And we'll jump more into that, both CFO University and some of the consulting you've done. But I want to go back to your days in corporate. You worked in corporate, worked your way up, and eventually becoming a CFO. I'm curious, what was the hardest part of making that adjustment from, being a team member to being over the entire function to being that CFO?
Yeah, I'd spent my career in accounting and finance with these multinational companies, which can be their own career paths, right?
Sure.
And so when I became the CFO at ConAgra Malt, I think that the most difficult things for me were becoming strategic. So all of a sudden, the tactical pieces where I'd been really successful with certain areas, whether it was, the P&L division in Cargill's grain department, or whether it was in our energy department where I kind of ran some of the logistics, I didn't have that strategic bent. So that was a big shift where all of a sudden, you have to really not get caught in the weeds. So I had to pull myself up from the weeds. I think another area was working with execs from really directly with sales and marketing, with operations, with some of the logistics people, and making sure that we worked together with them. In the past, I could do a lot of things on my own and come up with ideas, and it really didn't impact them as much. Now, the decisions I was making was going to impact them. And I think the third area, when I never had treasury operations. So at CFO University, we consider finance, accounting, treasury, and leadership as the 4 pillars of the CFO. And at my Cargill days, treasury was centralized. And so I never had that cash management fundraising experience I got thrown into as a CFO at the ConAgra joint venture. And so I think for me, that was very specific, a technical area I didn't have skills in. But I think the more strategic and the more being able to work with the executives from other departments and making sure I saw how they saw the business. Because that was my biggest transition was I thought I was the smartest in the room. And I very quickly learned that was not the case. And I better be able to work with these people and learn what they're all about. And so those were kind of the 3 big shifts I made when I became a CFO.
Yeah, and I want to dig into one of those. And that's the first one you mentioned of that becoming more strategic and also being able to see big picture versus being in the details and the weeds. Because I think that's a common challenge FP&A professionals have in general. I know it was a real challenge for me I had to work on is, okay, they don't need all the details. My boss doesn't care. He doesn't want them. He wants the strategic and the big picture. How did you make that adjustment?
Well, I think one of the things that helps a lot as a CFO is you have a team to help you do that. So you still need somebody in the weeds, somebody to do all the hard, that heavy lifting. And so but being able to manage them rather than wanting to do it. So, and especially finance and accounting, we're used to delivering results. We're used to doing the work. We don't mind hard work. And so, if you kind of enjoy that part of your role, all of a sudden, all that detail you're getting in where you're creating those insights from all that, somebody else is going to start doing that for you. Or you're not going to be in that CFO job very long. So I think for my background, it was being able to accept others are going to do great work. And I just need to be able to lead them and, nurture their great work and use it more strategically than tactically. And so that was, I think, kind of the biggest framework, mindset change for me was others are going to do the work. So it's not so much that you don't do the work or the group doesn't do the work, it's just that you're not doing the work, right? As much gratification as that used to come when I'd get that big project done, you kind of have to step back from that.
Makes total sense as a CFO. What if you're in a role where you're still pretty hands-on, but you're managing, or we're not managing, but you're supporting high-level people who want the big picture? Any advice of how you make that transition or focus on making things high level, right? Because you have to get into the weeds, but the people you may be supporting don't want you in the weeds. They want that big picture. And I know for me, it was difficult to make that adjustment or that switch. It took a lot of practice.
That is such a great question. And I still to this day, people look at a PowerPoint presentation of mine, they say, how come there's so much on there? So I have to consciously think, remove, 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 because my background, give them all that work I did because it's great detail.
Yeah.
And so you really have to step back from that and say, what's really important? And one of the best ways you can do that is to find some mentors to test with. And so what I would do is I had my CEO at ConAgra was great at this, but even other people that you're not necessarily presenting to, go over your presentations with them. Here's my message, and you'll get that great feedback. So that's one way to get real life feedback on here's what I was going to say, and let somebody kind of say, whoa, 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 that is way over the top. I just need the executive summary, and that really helps, will help you.
Yeah, I think that's great to get feedback from others. I've told this story many times on different podcast episodes. I had a boss that was extremely detailed. So we got along great because I'm very detailed. He wanted everything. Then all of a sudden they let him go through a reorg. And I had a new boss that wanted everything high level. And she didn't like me. And it was pretty apparent. It was like, he does good work. Just give him time. There were people, telling her that when she complained. And one guy would literally on meetings, he would DM me on the side, like, bring it up. You're getting too detailed. And we had an agreement. He would always tell me. And that was something that forced me to start thinking more big picture because I would want to get so much into the weeds. So it was definitely a hard transition for me.
Yeah, and I think it's something you have to consciously think about. And especially, again, finance and accounting people, we love the details. That's partly, a lot of us have the roots where the deep analysis is kind of what we, bringing something new by looking at things very carefully is kind of in our DNA. And so there's all this tension to say, well, now I want you to know all the work I did. And I think that's what you got to steer away from. Don't worry. That's a sunk cost. Figure out what we need to know to do their jobs. And that's when you can hit gold nuggets for sure.